All my exes die after we break up. The Curse of Hollyeve. Colin. Part 1. Written by Reddit user JamesGum724. A while back I shared my story of how all my exes die after we break up. At the time I published it, I thought that was the end of the story. It wasn't. Katie and I went through the motions of our loveless marriage, knowing the alternative was death for her, though sometimes I could tell she was wondering if that might be better. What was the point of living a life where you could never experience love? I could handle it, but I couldn't handle watching Katie struggle to handle it. I would wake up in the middle of the night to her crying to herself. I had to see if there was some way to solve the curse Hollyeve had over me. I turned to the internet. I was shocked to find a subreddit dedicated to Hollyeve and people who had fallen victim to her curse just like me. I put out a signal to get people on the sub to reach out to me, explaining what I explained in my previous story. Colin wasn't the first to reach out to me about Hollyeve, but he's where the rest of this story has to all start. We met at a dive bar in San Francisco. He kept looking around like he was scared someone was going to find him in there. He had the most broken energy of anyone I'd ever met. Colin was haunted by the apparition of a young woman, scorched and melting. The smell of burning human flesh appeared before he would see her. Then she would appear where he was, frequently lighting up the night as a sooty human flame which shrieked with the force of a dying child, staring at him with unforgiving eyes. This vision would have been bad enough just for Colin. The problem was, the apparition always appeared the first night Colin was alone with a girl. It started in high school and was still going on now into his 30s. It always followed the same script. Colin found new love, even if just for a night sometimes. He and the girl eventually got alone. Shortly after, the apparition appeared, horrified the girl, and she ran away. If the rare girl came back for a second try, the same thing would happen. The apparition would appear in some new shocking way, pop up in the mirror, hang upside down from the ceiling, slip into the covers once he and the girl did. No one ever lasted longer than a second try. He gave up on trying to experience any kind of love or intimacy in his 20s. He withdrew and became celibate. To him, his life was essentially over. There was almost no joy, just fear and pain. Then he tried to give it one last try, thinking he may have found a loophole. He went to a friend's bachelor party and ended up in a hotel room alone, getting a lap dance from a stripper, for longer than he would like to admit. The apparition never came and he wondered, what if it won't come if there's not even a hint of love in the transgression, purely just a business transaction? He hired a sex worker and went to her hotel room. He wanted to see if he could experience some kind of physical fulfillment and not be haunted. It started out well. He got the deed done for the first time in his life. It was relieving, shockingly professional, but enjoyable. And he thought he found a new way to get some kind of release in his life, in the area of what you would call the closest he could get to love without terror. The sex worker went to the bathroom after things were over. Colin grew alarmed when 10 minutes went by and she didn't come out. He knocked on the door. All he heard was crying.
What is this?
He heard her voice ring out at him through the door. Colin tried to get her to explain what was going on in the bathroom. She just screamed back.
You better be out of here when he gets here.
Colin didn't know who he was, but he didn't want to stick around to find out. He quickly found out he wasn't going to have a choice. He heard the door to the room unlock, and quickly Colin was looking at one of the largest men he had ever seen in his life. The intimidating man he described as the woman's manager grabbed him by the back of the neck and dragged him over to the bathroom door. The woman in the bathroom eventually was okay with opening the door. Slowly. Colin said he could smell that burning smell before he even saw what was going on in the bathroom. Still, he was not prepared for what he was going to see. The sex worker was in the middle of the room. Wrapped around her from behind was the apparition of Hollyeve, charred and burning, a haze of smoke billowing around them. Colin could see Hollieve's arms held tight on the sex worker's body, and she watched it burn into her. She screamed in pain as Hollyeve held her tighter as Colin and her manager approached the bathroom doorway. Colin could also see Hollieve's eyes burning into him, torturing him. The apparition knew what it was doing. He could feel it. Colin felt the hard metal of the manager's gun hit him up against the head before he could try and move. Then he fell hard to the ground. With his final couple of blinks, Colin saw the manager carrying the sex worker out of the bathroom, still smouldering, and he saw Hollyeve standing there in the bathroom. Colin then spent most of his time sitting on Reddit, looking for people like me out there who had similar experiences, so he could try and find some solution to the curse he was living. Well, I was the same as him more or less. So what could I do? It seemed to me that he might be able to help me more than I could help him. I wanted to know how this all started for him, but he had conveniently avoided that part. At this point, he started to get sheepish, blushing and breaking eye contact, staring down into the fourth drink he had almost finished in an hour. He clearly didn't want to talk about how this curse all started, but he started in ominously.
I brought this on all of us myself.
Colin was born and raised in a small town on the California coast, just a few towns over from where I grew up. A rich kid. He explained he was much better looking when he was younger. He said it so many times it started to really weird me out. He was a decent looking guy with some extra pounds. Who really cares? He also kept insisting that I don't judge him until I hear his full story. He knew the girl who was his apparition. Hollyeve. She showed up on the first day of 7th grade. No one ever asked where she came from, and she never volunteered the information. She just kind of appeared one day. She stood out. She wasn't the typical small-town girl most of the boys flocked to. She was edgy, odd, and haunting, yet beautiful. He said now she would be the kind of girl who'd become a fashion model because she had a look, but would swear she was never popular growing up because she was always just tall and awkward. All of this drew Colin in. Only problem was there was no way he could be with her. As he mentioned repeatedly, he was very good looking. He was rich. He was the coolest kid in school. He could never date the weird girl who showed up with holes in her shoes and a 1,000-foot stare. Colin got overconfident though, he thought. If Hollyeve became his girlfriend, then he could make her cool, make her attractive. He asked her out. She was shocked, and then said yes. Colin loved spending time with her. She was easygoing, cute, and sweet when no one was around. She was different from the other girls he had dated, in the best way. She did not become the most popular girl in school. Things actually got worse. She used to kind of just be an afterthought at school, but now everyone in his class was making fun of her, and the other girls were singling her out. Colin tried to press through it. He tried to sell his friends on how she was actually really cute. She was actually really cool. She was funny. It didn't work. No one else saw it. Everyone also kept asking Colin the same damn question. Was it a joke? He eventually relented. Yes, he lied. The whole thing was just a big joke. Then he had to break Hollieve's heart. Hollyeve had fallen in love with Colin, and he knew it. It was not going to be easy to go through with all of it, but dumping her would allow him to go back to his normal schoolyard life of not getting made fun of and questioned constantly. He had felt his popularity slipping. He had to do it. She took it even worse than he thought. She sobbed uncontrollably, hyperventilated. She kept asking him why. Why? Colin had to stop himself while telling me this part. I could feel the pain channeling through her and then him and then hitting me. No wonder this poor girl was haunting the world. He started to act strangely. He didn't want to tell the story anymore. He said he had to go to the bathroom and then never came back. I only got him on the phone eventually when I called from a different phone number. He talked to me long enough to tell me that Hollyeve did die. Nodded his hand though. That was all he would say. Well, he did say that she burned to death just before he hung up. I went home that night and didn't think too much of it. There were plenty of other Hollyeve victims I was in contact with. Colin may have just been another link in the chain, though I couldn't deny it seemed like this was the origin story for Hollyeve, and that made this thread possibly stronger than the other ones I was pursuing. I got some confirmation on that one after I ate dinner at home that night. My nose began to tickle as soon as I sat down after eating and the smells of the meal went away. Something began to sting my nose and eyes. It felt and smelled like when the plume of a campfire gets thrown in your direction. I didn't think anything of it until I started feeling like I was no longer alone, and the smell kept getting more and more intense. I walked into the kitchen, wondering if I'd left something burning on the stove or something. I was greeted by a blinding plume of smoke as soon as I opened the door and stepped in. I couldn't see anything. I could only feel and hear. I felt a cold hand strong on my neck, and I heard someone crying uncontrollably and hyperventilating. Then I heard them asking over and over and over again, "Why?" I was able to get out of the room and come back later. The smoke was gone. The crying was gone. Hollyeve was gone. I knew it was her. Yet it was troubling she simply presented herself that way to me, and aggressively. This was much more than simply destroying my love life. I contacted Colin every way that I could. Reddit messages, texts, voicemails. It was a day before he responded on Reddit. "I'm sorry. She just won't stop. Best of luck, Colin." Then his account was deleted. For part 3, look for the link in the description. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe, comment, share and like, and press the bell to get notifications when new videos are uploaded. If you have a story that you want Jimmy Horrors to read, send it to jimmyhorrorsnarrations@gmail.com. Until next time, stay horrific everyone.